Hi, I'm Dan Emery. You can find me on LinkedIn, and we'll talk about that at the end. I have a long career, and I've launched many companies and built them into Fortune 50 companies, such as Pilgrim, which we grew from 330 million to 8.5 billion. After that, I became a consultant. And so my practice is taking companies and being a company fixer. And I've had many successes, and I have a simple little model.
And I definitely want to hear about the model, but first I want to ask you, what is your secret to a good life?
Basically, taking as it comes and understanding that things change constantly. So if you're not rolling with the punches and enjoying it, you're missing something. I've been over half the globe, not all. I haven't been to Asia, but I've been all over Europe. I used to have a job. I set up a operation in Antwerp and in Sarnia, Canada, along with the U.S. And I had to go to Europe twice a month. So I learned to kind of enjoy it and not have it all be business. So part of it is just relax, take a deep breath. But sometimes you go places you'll never go before, or never again. So just enjoy it and take it in. Like I just got back to London later this year. I'm on board of a company, Microsalt, and we make a micro-encapsulated salt, and it's got 50% less sodium, but it's still natural salt. I got on this board, very ironically. I was interviewing to be the CEO, and I had to call them up and say, hey, I took this other job, more established company with a lot of money. And they said, well, how would you like to be on our board? And this was like roughly 3 years ago. And I said, that would be perfect. Let me go to my board and just ask for permission. And they said yes. And I've been on the board for 3 years. And it's really turned out to be a great experience. So again, just take life. I've had a lot of ups and downs, just like everybody else. And things are changing constantly. So if you're not changing, then you're behind. And you're a much younger guy than me. But I see all these 80-year-olds running around, and I think, okay, I still got lots of runway. So I think technically, maybe I'm not quite as advanced as someone who's 25 or 30, but for my age, I'm really pretty close.
Yeah, you consider yourself an adaptable person, it sounds like.
Very, very adaptable.
Now,
shot at, cussed out. I worked for Dale Earnhardt Senior, did Richard Petty's retirement tour. I've worked with billionaires. I've met 5 presidents. So again, they all put their pants on the same way. Funny story. I'm sitting at the table. It's me and Mr. Pilgrim and George W. Bush and my wife. And Mrs. Pilgrim leans over and she says, Dan, you know what we like about you? You're not scared of us. And I said, well, I never thought about that, but you're right. I worked for Mike Ditka for 4 years and we got along fine. So there's really no way to scare me.
I want to rewind the clock a little bit, and maybe we can. I've asked this question on the show before, but if you could go back in time and think of an age where you were a little bit more vulnerable, right? 10, 15, it could be 27, just a time where you were maybe going through something difficult, and you have an opportunity to write a fortune cookie sized little note to your younger self, and you get to slip it in your pocket, and they have no idea. They're just going to open it up and see it later. What advice would you write on that note, and why? And what age are you in your mind doing this?
I would say I'm in the middle 20s, and I've already got 2 kids and a lot of responsibility, and I've been married for 7 or 8 years. And I would just basically tell myself, hey, just take a deep breath, enjoy it. Because sometimes the times that seem like they're the worst end up being the best, just because you're, doing something difficult. I literally went through a transition where I went in to Charlotte and worked in NASCAR. I didn't even have a job when I got there, but then I ended up with numerous times very tenuous situations where I ended up on the crappiest business and very shortly ended up in a very good situation. So it's really just a matter of never panic, whatever happens. Because if you're looking, well, the other thing I would say is always look forward, never look backward. Every opportunity that you miss, it's gone. So forget about it. Just look forward.
How do you,
right there.
Yeah, looking behind, look forward.
Right. I mean, the past is a good lesson, but and that's it.
These the time in your middle 20s, did you ever I kind of want to know about the because you've done a lot in your life that has been successful. Was there ever a time that you failed or you were broke?
Well, when you're married in your 20s with a bunch of kids, you're always broke. So it took a while to get to the point where I was financially out of debt and everything, but I've been there a long time. But yep. Yeah. So part of it is, I would say from a financial standpoint, the key to life is take on a minimum amount of debt. If you can afford to buy a car without any debt, that is really the best way. And when I started buying cars with no debt, that was when I was really free. I've always had a mortgage. I don't have a mortgage now. Basically, I own everything and need to work another day in my life and be totally comfortable. But avoiding debt is really critical from a personal standpoint.
What would you say to somebody who is leveraging debt like Robert Kiyosaki? Someone who has built their whole career off of getting access to other people's capital. So
get other people's capital and debt can be two different things. There's a lot of wealthy people, and if you're investing their money and making them lots of money, that's different than going to a bank or money. Like being a publicly traded company, you're basically using that as capital, but it's different than being debt that you pay interest on. So corporate America from 2008 until like a year ago or 2 years ago, they were operating on something very close to free money. So that's what's really changed venture capital a lot, is now they're having to go out and borrow money and pay 7-8%. And that's a whole different ball game than paying 4 or 5%. So they can't just go, do all these flips and it be the same. Now, if they have investors and they're investing their investors' money, I've done 8 companies where I basically increased the value, and these are all middle to mid-sized companies for the most part. And we've been able to, in the last 2 years, go in there, change a few things, and work the fundamentals, and increase the value by 100%. And those companies are sold. And that's really what venture looks for. But they did it with a lot of debt. And if you can do it with less debt, it's better.
Yeah. So these you've all got a process in place. Can you just like give me the maybe not 30,000 foot view, but like the 10,000 foot view? Like we're about to descend on the process. You've got a straight line process that you use for all of these companies that you go through. Can you highlight the main steps and what people should look out for while they're building their business?
Yeah. So medium-sized companies, they are the lifeblood of America. It's where innovation occurs. They're growing. They have very dynamic businesses, but they do all the common things wrong. Almost all of them have, if you have a list of 10 things, they're doing 7 or 8 of them wrong. They don't understand their target, what their unique selling proposition is. Their senior management's not engaged. They're not enabling a team. What I do now is I walk in the door, meet the people, gain their trust, kind of step back and listen a lot. And there's a major consulting firm, and I don't want to use their name, but all they do is they go in and interview 1,000 people, and then they do what 80% of them tell them to do. So I say you need to engage and get the tribal knowledge. If you get the tribal knowledge, you'll know exactly what you need to do. And it's not just numbers. You got to look beyond the numbers. Numbers are important. Don't get me wrong. But people know what needs to be fixed. The question is, will they tell you? And they'll always tell you. You just have to gain their trust.
Is this a mix of customers or employees at these organizations?
No, well, customers too. More employees than customers. But yeah, if you go out and spend some time with the customers, they'll tell you pretty fast too. So if you just take that advice and, businesses are like a puzzle. You put them together. And since COVID, things have changed a lot. So what's a really great opportunity right now is CEOs are pushing people back into the office. I really love Elon Musk, but he's trying to force all his people back into the office. It might be right for him, but 89% of the people are better out of the office. They're 17% more productive. You can't steal paper, pens and pencils when you're not there and you're not taking up office space. One business I would hate to be in right now is to have a bunch of office space. I have a buddy and he has $8 billion worth of office space. So it's brutal, especially in big cities like New York and San Francisco and Chicago. So anyway, yeah. So I have a process. I go in and do the same thing. And within about 90 days, we have a big strategic planning meeting and we build that team dynamic and we get together and we build a plan and then people are engaged. Okay, so you're a younger guy and so you'll understand this. Younger people are totally different than people my age because they have to understand the why. If they don't, they're going to sit there with their arms folded. But if they're together building a plan and they're using peer pressure with each other to challenge each other, then it becomes a team. I mean, I literally sat on the sidelines with the Chicago Bears right after they won the Super Bowl and got to hear those guys basically dog cussing each other, and that's teamwork. That whole team dynamic's important. And so the reputation is younger people don't work. Well, in my generation, they said we didn't work either. So that's all a bunch of hooey. You just have to understand your generation's wired differently. And then once you embrace it and understand it and know how to use it, you guys will work as hard or harder than we will.
Yeah, there's an element of business books of the time influencing us as well. You have works by Simon Sinek, right? Starting with Why. There's a lot of these purpose-driven, pieces, and there's a lot more 501c3s and benefits corporations that are being founded,
right?
More than in like 20 years, right? In the last 2, and so there's a big happening, and I'm curious from your perspective. You've got this idea of how people in my generation are going to go about being motivated and making plans inside of their organization. Talk to me about what you see as the future of the economy and the future of the way that money moves and the way that work happens and the future of our civilization. Are we going to move towards a more, a less capitalistic form of economy? Is there going to be great evolution? Is AI going to bring about some fundamental change in the fabric of how society works and operates and keeps track of things? What are some of your thoughts on that?
So I think AI has been with us a while, and the smart people have been using it already. And I've done robotics projects with some of my clients where instead of having 3 guys loading packages onto a pallet, and we have a robot loading, what that really requires, that type of AI robotics requires a long-term commitment. And if you make a long-term commitment, it's software, it's maintenance, it's investment. If you do that, you'll be ahead of your competition, but you have to understand that going in. And, so typically I prepare upper management for, okay, this is a 5-year process. At the end of the 5 years, you'll still be in business and some other people won't. And, there's some ups and downs, but robots come to work every day. Now, the other part of AI is electronics, and obviously SAP and software and production planning. That's been around a long time. We put in our first SAP system in 97, and it was a total nightmare for a little while, but once we worked through the kinks, then it was pretty good. AI in some form has been with us all along. It's just a new name. We have a tendency to create a new name and think it's something new, but it's just an evolution.
And what is your advice for the next round of entrepreneurs in this world?
And I'm going to go back and finish answering the other question. We are going from a global economy to a regional economy. And you're in Texas. This will be important to you. The whole Chinese business model is a house of cards. I'm not going to say it's going to totally collapse, but it's going to change a lot. And even a lot of that money is moving to Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, because labor's cheaper. You can't just have 40 years of one child and the math does not work. So cheap labor is no longer available and aging out in China. So we'll have to become less and less dependent on them. And they've been willing to trash their environment to operate at a number, and that's going to go away. So you need to, I'm always 5 years ahead. And I've been telling this story to people for 5 years. And one of my friends, who is Chinese, went over after COVID and he said, you were right. I went to the furniture district and there was 12 companies the last time I was there, and there's one. And they didn't go out of business, but they moved someplace close by. And, I had to reconnect. But again, be ahead of the world and ahead of your competition, not behind, because things are changing. And even, some people are still licking their wounds from the election, but it just means you move your chips to a different place. If you were in green tech and you were really dependent on that, well, it's going to change a little bit. They will build the Keystone Pipeline and certain things will change. So, just be current and be ahead versus behind. And AI is going to happen whether we like it or not.
It's here. Yeah.
It's been here. Yeah, it's been here.
On the shots. There was I interviewed a woman earlier today who she wrote a book on AI in 2017. And when you start looking at it, it's like, oh yeah, like the commercialization of AI is really the newest element of it. The smartest people have just been running it in the back end.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We did a project when I was in junior in college. We were looking at a data set that was being given to us by nickel nanostrand sensors, and we were running it through an already existing machine learning platform. And it's just the implementation of these language processors that have kind of up to the next level. And so, last question for you today: Are there any mindset activities that you do, prayers that you give, meditations that you follow, journaling practices that you're militant about, that you incorporate into your life every single day or regularly to keep on top of things and stay sharp?
A lot of things. What I would say is, this is going to sound really stupid, but if you can accomplish one thing every day, you'll be surprised, because that's really, really, really important. Now, sometimes some days you'll accomplish 10 things, and I always have a list and I mark them off the list. The other thing is, I do a lot of thought in my sleep. And I was reading something, I've learned to sleep a lot more effectively. And I have a problem healthy habits. And one of the most important things is sleep. I have these friends and they do all this incredible, vegan eating and things like that. And then they get 5 hours of sleep and they destroy the whole thing. Well, the other important thing about sleep is, if you can program your mind, you can think in your sleep, and you can work through problems and do some great problem solving. So I started out in sales, and I worked for a really great company. And on the marketing side, they were all Procter & Gamble, Colgate, Palmolive, blue chip marketing people. And they recruited me to come over there. And then I learned marketing from them. But I learned to plant things in my dream, in my thoughts, as I go to sleep. And then I'll think about them and work through these problems. And when I was in sales really early on, I would just leave a pad by the bed. And when I woke up, I'd write the, big idea down. And again, I'm older than you, but I use AI voice dictation. Well, I've been doing that for 7 or 8 years, and it just gets better and better. So, I just use PowerPoint dictation and Word dictation. And I'll just get up and write a PowerPoint right after I wake up. And sometimes I'll write something down just so I don't forget that part of it. But, getting it down on paper is super important. Like Sarbanes-Oxley, the reason all these venture deals were available is in the old days before Sarbanes-Oxley, all these older guys would just go public. And so one of the companies I did consulting for, they sat me down and said, okay, my brother's 62 and I'm 63 and our cousin's 61 and we all want to go to the beach and we want to sell our company and it's $50 million now, but we think should be worth a lot more. Can you help us? And a year later, we sold their company for $100 million.
Wow.
Just by changing a few things and changing practices. And we actually came up with a healthier farming practice that the company that bought us was really attracted to. We also just happened to increase sales by 40%.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
But, I just did one, we increased sales 500%. So just, figuring out what the barriers are to progress. There's always these pinch points. If you go look for those pinch points and eliminate them, that's really the key. Get ahead, plan in your sleep, get a good night's sleep, have healthy habits, and never let anything get you too excited.
Dan, where can everyone find you?
If you look me up on LinkedIn, I have about 23,000 connections. And I do Facebook and I do Instagram, not very much. And I do X some, but I get between 50 and 100,000 impressions a week on LinkedIn. And maybe one day they'll blackball me because I'm too entertaining and not businessy enough. But, on a good week, well, I had one post and I didn't think a thing about it. And it got 389,000 impressions. And then it just shut down. And I know it got a lot more. I just think that's where the clicker ends with them. But I experiment. I'm a marketer by nature. So I experiment with what gets clicks. And so I always want to know what gets clicks. And you never know. Just try.
Yeah. Trial
and on digital, it costs nothing to try. So why not?
Yeah.
And every audience, every one of those platforms is different. And TikTok, it's going to be interesting with TikTok if they actually force it out of the U.S. I think that's going to be very difficult, but that's possible.
And thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
This has been the Pulse Ox podcast. Please, if you found this episode valuable, give us a like on Spotify and share it with a friend.